Hello there and welcome to Community Life. Here we talk with the community experts about their life journeys and learn from each other. And today we have a conversation with Kerri Williams, a digital experience and community strategy consultant, a mother of three, two kids and a dog, an owner of a bookstagram and a dogstagram account, and a great person to talk to. So hello, Kerri.
Hello, thanks so much for having me.
Super happy. Since Blake connected us, I'm so excited to have this conversation. So let's start with the beginning, with the first question. When I checked your LinkedIn, I immediately noticed this phrase by Estee Lauder. I never dreamed about success. I worked for it. So when did you hear this quote for the first time?
Yeah, that's a great question. I came across that quote when I was looking for some inspiration to launch my recent consulting business, which is KW Success Services. And so I was sort of looking for success themed quotes and that sort of thing. And that one just really resonated with me. It stuck out. I've always been one to pride myself in hard work and I look at my career and whatnot in my life as being successful because I work hard for it. And that sort of really resonated with me. So I thought I'd kind of express that there.
Is it your motto outside the work life too?
Um, I probably not so much. As even recent posts in my LinkedIn will suggest. I'm working on not working so hard. I also have a life, like you mentioned. I have two children and a dog and husband and lots of responsibilities. So I think it's really important to also make time to relax and step away from that as well. So probably a little less in my personal life, more so around my work life.
Is it possible for you to go completely offline for some time?
Depends how long. It's definitely possible. I have done it. I have a cottage that is pretty close to off the grid. And there's kind of a spot about a 3 foot radius underneath a very specific tree where you get service. So it becomes sort of a real requirement to interrupt your day, to go pick up your phone, to stand
Mm.
in the right spot, to check your email. So I certainly can. I get a little itchy and antsy when I'm away from things. I'm working on that again, like I said, trying to step away and relax and focus on the present and being with my family. But yeah, I can do it, but it certainly is a challenge.
Have you ever left home without a phone?
Not on purpose.
I can imagine. Yeah, like I feel like phones are like, I don't know what, fifth, sixth, seventh part of us, of
Mhm.
real human beings. Yeah, like we are so connected. So let's start from the beginning. Tell me about your parents. Who are they?
Parents. Ooh, that's a interesting question. My mother was she's retired, was a microbiologist at a local hospital where I grew up. My father was a survey engineer for the city. So he sort of went out to job sites and checked out did survey stuff. I don't really know exactly what he did. Both are retired now for quite a while. They divorced when I was about 4, so kind of grew up with a bit of a single mother, and have an older brother. He's about 3 years older than I am. And yeah, I think that's, it's funny you mentioned the quote because I think that's also kind of part of where it came from. And it does come into my personal life a little bit just because my mother did work very hard, and was always kind of, trying to make up for, my dad not being around quite as often. Still had a great relationship with him and still do, but just, acknowledging that he wasn't living with us. And so that added a little bit of
Yeah.
extra effort, I think. So I think that's kind of part of where I get that from.
And how did it feel for you to have an older brother while growing up?
My older brother and I did not get along great when we were young. It took a long time for us to come back together, I would say. We have a good relationship now. He's a great uncle to my kids. They adore him. I
Hmm.
also have nieces and nephews on his side. So really great relationship now. Growing up, it was just very different. I think we were just far enough apart with 3 years that we didn't really share interests. And I was still kind of the annoying little sister more often than not, wanting to go play with the boys. And I have a cousin that's the same age as my brother, and I always used to go and bother them, and my grandmother would yell at me to leave the boys alone and let them do their thing. So again, kind of had to make my own way and try and get my own attention somehow. So yeah,
Mm.
that was probably, I guess that was kind of, it was good. It was just not really, we weren't super close when we were kids.
Were you disappointed when you had to leave the boys alone?
Yes. Yes. And it's quite funny. I now see so much of it in my daughter. The same thing. My sons, they're closer in age, but she still wants to be involved and still wants to do all the things that the grown-ups or bigger kids are doing and tagging along. And at certain points when I was younger, I certainly felt like it was better or easier to be annoying just to get attention than it was to just leave them alone and go do my own thing. So yeah, I think I was disappointed because I always just wanted to be part of something. I wanted to be part of what was going on. And they always seemed to be, outside
Hmm.
playing baseball and sports and running around and hiding from me. And, I thought it was fun to try and get in on that.
And like a cool kids.
Yes.
And what did you do when you had to leave them alone?
I probably went and bothered my grandmother the most. Usually she was the amazing person. I absolutely adored her. And she was usually one to help me find something else to do, or she'd give me the attention that I was craving. We just go for walks, or she'd sit and do a puzzle with me, or play checkers, or cook, or whatever it was. And she just really kind of made sure that I had something that I felt like I was still getting attention, probably.
And what is the one thing you just adored doing with your grandmother?
Oh. That's a hard one. My grandmother was just an awesome person. She was always just super kind to everybody and just would do anything for anybody and was really the sort of glue of our family. And she used to cook. That was her big thing.
Hmm.
My grandfather was born on a farm. My dad, they grew up on the farm, and lived on the farm till they passed away. And it was just it was like stepping back in time, sort of. And you had, these gigantic farm dinners, and there'd be 12 people sitting around the table, and five different kinds of pie for dessert. And she'd made all this the day of. So that was kind of her superpower, was just like making these amazing meals for her family, and everybody walking away completely and utterly full, and still wanting more because it was always amazing. But yeah, I think it was just spending time with her and just really kind of watching what she was doing and how she was taking care of others.
What is the first memory of your childhood that comes to your mind right now?
What springs to mind is just because there's a picture, and you've probably seen it on my Instagram, of me at my grandparents' farm, because we're on that topic. And there was cows in the background, and I was like maybe three or four. And I was pretty cute, I think. So I kind of, and I'm not sure that I remember that exact moment, but I remember that feeling. And those are always kind of the ones that stand out to me. Like I said, that the farm was just so unique. And, my grandfather had a horse-drawn carriage or horse-drawn sleigh that he put out for Christmas, and he put a gigantic Santa in it. And like, it was just, you pull up on Christmas, and it was like, always reminds me, if you've seen, maybe you haven't, but Garfield's Christmas, the cartoon, when you watch that, that's what I
Mhm.
always think of when I see that, is just sort of our Christmases when I was a kid, and these like, pulling up, and it's just this crazy farmhouse with this gigantic sleigh in the middle. And yeah, it was just, any time we were there was kind of just a bit of a blur, but great memories and just kind of the feeling, and you remember that feeling and the smells. Like you said, you remember the smells.
Yeah, I can imagine. And there is such a, well, from one point is fresh air, from another point is all these cows and chickens and all the stuff.
Yeah.
And it's not always that fresh, but still, yeah, I totally get what you're talking about. And
Yeah.
what was your favorite animal on the farm?
There were little baby goats, and they were so cute. And it was really funny. I remember after my grandmother passed away, actually, my grandpa was still at the farm, and he had sold the part of the farm that had animals and whatnot, but he was still close with them.
Mhm.
And so I remember pulling up one day and go visit him, and he was like, "Come here, come here, come look." And he like walks over to the fence, and he's like 89 years old at this point. And so, but he was so taken with these little goats, and he's like, "Let's go see them." And so we went in and like petted the little goats. And it was really quite adorable to watch, kind of, this old farmer getting emotional and sappy about little baby goats.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely super emotional. And if you could tame any animal in the world to make it a pet, what animal it would be?
Oh, has such good questions. There's no way I would be able to prepare for that type of question. Oh, what would it be? I would say like a, maybe a monkey. For some reason, I feel like I would like a monkey. Either a monkey or a panda
Why?
was my other kind of thought. I was like, it would be really snuggly and it's cute, but then they get really big. But like maybe like
They're
a
kind of
small monkey.
different. Okay, so why?
Um, oh wow. So when we were younger, kids used to call myself and my brother monkey ears because like we sort of hadn't grown into our ears at the time. I feel like
Hmm.
I've grown into them just fine now. But we sort of embraced it and we developed a monkey face. And I don't think I can do it on camera right now because it's mortifying. But you can imagine what a monkey face might look like. And yeah, I just have always kind of had a thing for monkeys.
Okay, so you can show it on camera, but tell me, what is the difference between monkey face and poker face?
Well, poker face is when you just kind of
Hmm.
like there's no facial expression. Monkey face is a little bit more animated.
A little bit more expressions. I
Yes.
got it.
Yeah.
Do you have ice cream for breakfast only on your birthdays?
Yes. And not every birthday. That was well, I'm not every birthday, but I certainly have. That was kind of a theme. When I was younger, my mom used to go and get us dessert for breakfast all the time. And I'm Canadian, so we have Tim Hortons. And at Tim Hortons, they used to have what were called bow ties. And they were
Hmm.
basically like almost like eclairs or like long donuts
Hmm.
that had icing on the top. So my mom would always get us one for dessert or breakfast on our birthday and put a candle in the top. So having sweets, a crazy amount of sweets for breakfast on our birthday is sort of a bit of a tradition for me.
So you basically didn't even have to be an adult to eat sweets on breakfast, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And do you enjoy eating sweets on breakfast?
I enjoy all sweets at any time of day. And yeah, there's probably not a sweet that I don't like. Again, probably inherited that from my grandmother, as she was constantly offering various delicious items.
What is your favorite one?
Probably pecan pie. It's basically a big butter tart. It's delicious.
How do you feel about breaking rules?
Um, I think rules can be broken if it's the right thing to do. I think you should always weigh what the right choice is. And if the rule does not align to what you feel strongly is the right thing to do, then occasionally I will act first and ask forgiveness later.
Oh my God, I love this phrase. Yeah, I'm always talking about this, so it's so much easier to ask for forgiveness than it is to get a permission.
Yes, yes. Now, if you were to talk to me in my teenage years, I might tell you something completely different. But I'd like to think I've matured a little bit since then. My son asked me the other day why people steal shopping carts from shopping malls.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
I, kind of said, you know, sometimes they need them to put their stuff in, or sometimes they just do it for fun. And he said, Mom, have you ever stolen a shopping cart? And I said, well, I don't think
Not
so.
yet.
I did, however, once was an accomplice in the stealing of a large drumstick sign from a gas station. And actually, the police chased us, pulled us over, and made us take it back. And we were on our way to a rugby game, and so we were late. But they were really good sports about it and let us take pictures and show our coach that we got pulled over by the cops. And that's why we were late for the game. So yeah,
So
rules,
t
rules in the right context, I guess, can be pushed, flexible.
tell tell me a story behind this sign.
They're really, and this is what my son was asking. He's like, "Why did you do that?" Like, I'm not really sure. First of all, it wasn't me specifically that took the sign. It was one of my fellow players who is a little bit rambunctious, we'll call her. And he's like, "Yeah, why did she do that?" And I'm like, "I don't know, it was funny. Like we just kind of thought it was funny. I don't know why exactly, but we did." And he's like, "But why did she do that? Like, why doesn't anybody take these things?" I'm like, "That's it. I couldn't tell you." But it turned into a good story, like I said, and it just came to mind because my son was asking me about it, and I was thinking about how to explain to him why stealing signs is somewhat funny because it's really not, but it was at the time.
It's just a fun story, and stopping by the police, he just reminded me I had very similar thing. Like
Still an ice cream
I
sign?
hang out with my friend, not a sign, but we had one building where was like car fix station or something like that, and they had some old cars outside of the yard, so
Mm-hmm.
basically out on the street.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my elder friends, there was like, oh, why don't we go and take some details out of those cars? And he was
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, sure. Why not? Because it's just outside of the street. It's nobody's car. So yeah. So basically we just screwed up some things. I took for me this um, thing for a belt when you buckle the belt, like put it inside and
Mm-hmm.
this nice sound click, and then you push the button, it's unclick. And for some reason, two elder person decided to go back. Like we went there for one time, nobody noticed us. They decided to go back and steal the rear view mirror of a car.
Oh.
And then they got busted, not by the police, by the owner, which was worse. And I feel like he even hit some of person. And then we were playing on the street, and then some person is coming like, do you know where this Yuri lives? I was like, why? He was like, I'm a detective, so I'm just like working on this case. And it was so I was so afraid. So they went to my parents. They explained what we've done. Basically, we didn't, like it was the only one thing that I took, all this small part. So they just told me, okay, so please go put it back then, and we'll think that nothing happened. We will just deal with those guys. So this story you told like very much reminded me myself, and I feel like I was so much influenced by elder. And I
Mm-hmm.
wonder, did you have such influence from elder people? Not
Um,
not even people, but like elder children.
I was often the instigator of things, so I can't say I don't think I was overly influenced by what if they were older or not. It was usually just sort of whatever we could do to sort of push the envelope, I think. We were kind of known for particularly that year playing rugby was a little bit crazy. Um, we had quite the team that was they were quite a bit older than me, but I was probably the one that was causing most of the myself and the girl who stole the sign were kind of notorious on that team for getting us into trouble of various kinds.
W-
No one
Tell
ever
me
ended up
about
actually arrested though. So that's, I've never actually been arrested. I've
just
only ever
clean
had two
cases.
speeding tickets in my life. So I am not by nature a law or rule breaker.
I would say that you're a silent rule breaker. So you just didn't get catch,
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. I think you call.
So tell me a story about your bookstagram account.
Yeah. So my bookstagram account came about because I've always been a reader since I was very, very young. I loved reading. I would always beg my mom to take me to the mall to pick out, a $5 Fear Street store. Fear Street book was the big thing at that point. Um, and I loved those little books, and I would just kind of take them home and devour them in an afternoon. And I had bookshelves that were full books. I've always loved to read. But as I got kind of older and into my teen years and into my university years, you spend a lot of time reading things that you don't want to read. And so,
Mhm.
or that, isn't quite as interesting to read, with textbooks and all that fun stuff. So, um, I really didn't read for that long, or for quite a while. I stopped reading, things that I enjoyed. And then in the last few years, my mom actually has started to read a ton again. She never
Mm,
really read much when I was growing up, so I was thought it was kind of interesting that in her retirement, she sort of picked up reading as a hobby.
mm,
And she started kind of just leaving me books, and I started kind of
mm.
getting back into reading. And now I'm maybe a little bit addicted. And I buy a ton of books and I read a ton of books. I average probably I want to say 7 or 8 fiction a month.
Mhm,
So yeah, I just really enjoy it. The Bookstagram came about because I started following a bunch of people and noticing like people were just posting books they were reading and posting reviews. Because
mhm,
you're always, as a reader, you're always looking for what's next and what other people like. And again, it sort of comes down to the community aspect where you know, you're finding people that are like you. You're finding people that like the same reading that you do. And so, you want to be part of that community so that you can pick up the same books or you can recommend books to them. And yeah, it just kind of became something that now, it was a bit of, I don't want to say it was a joke to start with, but it started, small, and then it's still small, but I have like 400 followers, and I haven't like actually gone out to do anything to get those followers. All I've done is just post what I'm reading. So it's been fun. I enjoy it. And it's just again something that you can share with this community and really start to discover new stuff and share your own thoughts.
I know that reading a fiction book is much easier and faster than reading a non-fiction book, but still, how do you find time to read?
When I'm reading that much, 7 or 8, I probably have one or two, at least two on the go. And what I
Mhm,
usually will do is have one audiobook, and one physical book on the go. So that way, if I'm out walking the dog, I listen to the audiobook. If I'm getting ready for bed and I read before I go to bed, then I'm reading my physical book. And so that's usually how I get it done. I also just sort of take books with me if I'm going somewhere. If
mhm.
I take my son to karate class and I have to wait there for 45 minutes, I sit and read my book. So, I think it's just kind of weaving it into your day. I started using it as kind of a deflection because I found I was spending a huge amount of time on my phone, as you
Yeah.
mentioned. And then I just felt like that was an easier way to do it. But then at the same time, there's also like ebooks. There's a really great app called Libby. And I think it's North American. But basically all you have to have is a library card and you can log in and
Mm.
actually check out ebooks for 2 weeks, and then it sends it back.
Hmm.
And so that's the other thing I've been doing. They have audiobooks through there, they have ebooks. And so again, even if I just have my phone, I can still pick up and read whenever I want. So that's kind of, I just squeeze it in here and there, kind of as I have time and downtime, or time to kill.
So for you, what is the difference between audiobook and textbook?
Um, hmm. I prefer a textbook just in terms of sitting down and reading. I also prefer a physical book over an ebook. Um, I think that just goes back to, like I said, being a kid and buying the book and the excitement that I got from
Mm.
buying books and, having them in my hand and then having the collection as well, right? It was you sitting and looking at your bookshelf and going, like, look at all my books. Um, which is kind of strange in a way, because when you think about it, the number of times I've reread a book is pretty minimal. So, actually keeping them seems strange, especially when you move. We've moved 3 times and I've had to purge my collection a little bit each time. And this last move, I've really added to it. So if we ever move again, there's going to be a lot to go. And audiobooks, it took a while for me to like them. I actually
Mhm.
started liking them after I got into listening to podcasts more. I'm much more of I'm not sure the difference in learning and recall, but certainly whatever it takes in terms of the actual action of reading it is stronger for me than hearing it. So I definitely prefer that. And, audiobooks are fine. And some of them, are really good. I like the ones that have different character voices, because then you feel like you're sort of listening to something that is sort of
Yeah.
a bit more of a production. But yeah.
And more real, because I asked you this question because I tried to listen to audiobooks and it was so hard for me to focus because there is only one voice and
Mhm.
telling everything in one speed with kind of one intonation without changing anything. And I was like, oh my God, I'm falling asleep. And that's exactly, as you mentioned, podcast. That's exactly why I love podcast, because it's more like a conversation. And if you have like this, I've never heard an audiobook with different voices, but I feel
Okay.
like it's a really amazing thing. Yeah.
They are starting, there's not a ton of them, but I have come across a few where they're different voices, or, you get someone who just sort of speaks in a different voice for each character.
Hmm.
So at least, like you said, it breaks the monotony a little bit.
And what fiction book you'd advise me to read?
Oh, well, what sort of genre are you into, Yuri? Are you a thriller guy? Are you
I'm
a
reading
rom-com?
everything. So I really I'm reading everything. Like, and for me, when I'm choosing the next book to add to my reading list, I have a
Mhm.
huge list, and it's always, I'm always changing positions, and it's
Mhm.
all because of people. So basically, there is no book I found myself. It's always
Mhm.
somebody mentioned it, and it
Mhm.
all depends on like what is kind of feedback behind the
Mhm.
book. So that's exactly what I'm curious what you would advise me to read, like without even
Um,
like, yeah.
Well, one of my favorite books of the year, I love true crime as well. I'm big into true crime. I watch a lot of documentaries. My husband and I watch a ton of different um documentaries and that sort of thing on Netflix, and I'm forgetting the name of the one that he watches all the time. But So my favorite book is a book called If You Tell by Greg Olson. Not for the faint of heart. It is not a light story. It is a very sad story. But it was so well written. I think I read it in a day. And I think it's 400 pages. And so it's a solid long read, but it was just so unbelievable in some ways, that it really just sort of sucked me in, and I really just had to finish the book. So that's kind of been my recommendation for folks if you are into that sort of thing. But again, a warning, not a light read by any means. Very sad and potentially traumatic for some folks. But again, from a true crime perspective, I find that one was a really well written and good book.
Do you ever notice that books may influence your life after you've read them? Like, I
Um,
mean, as you said, as you told that, like, this is a sad book. So when you finish, did you notice that you're, were a little more sad?
Not for me personally, because I read so much. That one has sat with me certainly because it was memorable. But it's so outrageous, it almost felt like a fiction book. So
Hmm.
admittedly, there was probably some detachment in terms of like that maybe it wasn't real. I mean, it was, but at the same time, because I do read a lot of fiction, it kind of leave gives me the ability to separate a little bit. I also vary my reading a huge amount. I often will alternate between like a crazy sci-fi thriller and a rom-com, and then I'll mix in some historical fiction. And those are kind of my three go-tos. And then if I want something super, just brain candy, as they call it, I'll read some like Colleen Hoover or something that's just kind of complete fluff. But
If there is a book and there is a movie and you haven't seen and read anything, what will you start with?
I will read the book first. And then I want
So
to
you
make
want
sure
to
that
know all the details.
I want to read the book first, and then I need to hear from others if the movie is up to worth watching, if it is up to the book. Or in some cases, the movie is better than the book. That's been pretty rare, I think. I can't think of any book,
Hmm.
any shows that I saw that were actually better than the book, but some
Yeah,
people.
I'm thinking a lot about this because, for example, if you read a book, there are so many details and you have this imagination in your mind. But then when you, for example, watch a movie, you can basically, play a scene
Mhm,
which maybe like wrote, I don't know, in 30 pages. You
mhm,
can show this scene in like seconds. And
mhm,
I can imagine that while reading those 30 pages, you are getting slowly into the scene. So you kind of feeling
mhm,
it more. And when you
mhm,
see it in the movie, it doesn't feel the same, even though it's like exactly the same.
mhm.
But still,
The main exception I would say to that would be Game of Thrones. I never read the Game of Thrones books. And I actually, so fun fact, I didn't watch Game of Thrones when it was airing. I only began watching it, I want to say in May of this year with my husband. He wanted to rewatch it. And I forget why I didn't. I think I was pregnant with my second at the time
Mhm.
when it was kind of really big. And the amount of violence and nudity and things that are going on there are not really a pregnant brain, not something it necessarily wants to be watching. So I didn't get into it at the time. But we rewatched it in May. And so we've just completed the entire series. And so I feel so out of the loop, like I missed something now that it's over. I'm like, man, I really wish I had like been part of this when it was happening, because now no one cares. But like this was mind blowing at the time. And I distinctly remember people talking about it, but I was like, I had no idea because I didn't watch it. And I just couldn't figure out why people were so into this Game of Thrones things. But I got
you know,
completely obsessed, and my husband died laughing every time I'd beg him to watch an episode.
it's so funny. I still didn't watch it, but I know the phrase, the winter is coming. So if I'm talking ever, if I'm talking this phrase, I just can literally see in the room, full of people who watched or who act like me, kind
Hmm.
of like, they also watched like the winter is coming, and everyone like giggles. It's
You need
crazy.
to watch it. You need to watch it. I was one of those people too. So another little tidbit, I have never seen The Lord of the Rings, any of them. I don't intend to, not my thing. But
Hmm.
again, I tend to get the same reaction from that as I did when I would say I hadn't seen Game of Thrones. But I mean, maybe I need to go watch the Lord of the Rings now because I loved Game of Thrones after all, even though I kind of fought it a little bit when it was big.
Did you read it?
No, I have not read either of them. That is one genre that I think is better suited for screen, just to your point, setting up the details in scenes and the amount that happens in one scene in those shows. I think those are probably better suited. I don't think I'm that much detail in writing would be challenging for me. I prefer a little more dialogue and a little more a little more excitement.
Yeah, but okay, so this one I watched and read, and okay, so 1-1.
All right.
Anyway, yeah, I'm just kidding. And when I'm thinking about the Ring of my God, I feel like it was so forever ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I even wonder, like, how would I, think about it now if I rewatched or reread? So, have you ever had a book or a movie which you watched or read when you were a kid and then reread?
I mean, I don't think so. When I was a kid, like I said, I was into a lot more fluffy kind of
Hmm.
stuff that was not, the classics. Like for instance, I never read, The Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe, which I know is a big, sort of young fiction book, but I've never read that. And I've never seen movies. I was a little bit more I don't know. I wasn't as classic in my tastes, I guess. It wasn't as deep. I just wanted the surface sort of fluff and something to turn my brain off. And yeah, I did the Babysitters Club, had that whole collection of those, and Sweet Valley High and all that fun stuff. I'm totally dating myself right now, but
And in general, do you reread any books except for sure John Bacon's book?
that is probably, like I said, the only one I probably reread. I want to say I've read Wicked more than once, but it's not a regular repeat. I like similar to yourself, I have a very long, what we call a TBR, to be read list, or
Yes.
pile. I have a very large pile of that. So the opportunity to go back and read books, unless I really, really wanted to, I don't typically do.
Who's your favorite South Park character?
Oh. Um, I am not a big South Park fan. I mean, I'd have to go with Kenny just because he's kind of I vaguely recall him. And I think yeah, that I'd have to go with Kenny because I think that's the only one that I can really fairly remember. My brother watched quite a bit of it, but I think for my age group, admittedly, it was a bit crude for me. And being a girl, I don't know. I think by age and by being a girl, I wasn't quite as amused. It was also, feel like it was on really late too, which might have been past my bedtime at the time. Um, but yeah, I'd have to go with Kenny, I guess.
It's fun. I had a conversation with Lisa Barocca, and she shared that she was watching these cartoons when she were a kid, and her grandmother didn't understand English, and she thought that it's just cartoons, just fun. Okay, so
Oh
let kid
no.
watch cartoons. And she had so much fun out of this. And grandmother didn't understand anything, and yeah, go watch it. Have you ever understood what Kenny said?
Don't think so. I don't think
Because
so. It was always gibberish, I think.
yeah, I watch sometimes South Park with subtitles, and they sometimes added something what Kenny might have said, and it
Ah,
was so fun. And when I read those subtitles, I was, oh, maybe that's exactly what he's saying.
I never thought
It's
about that. We turned the subtitles on for Game of Thrones because it translates Dothraki for you. But
Mhm,
other than
mhm.
that, I don't do the subtitles myself, but turning it on for South Park could also be interesting.
What do you like the most while working on do-over projects?
Ooh, I love refinishing because I can almost get to like a Zen state. It's kind of my Zen. I can have a glass of wine and just paint and close my brain off. Um, a lot of them sort of, I mean, I've done it for years and years, but not a lot of projects at once until we bought our most recent house. We actually ended up buying all of the furniture that was in it from the people who were moving out.
Mm-hmm.
And they were an older couple and had sort of dated tastes, but good quality. So I had a ton of projects in my house to do. And so I refinished pretty much every dresser. I think there was 3 or 4 dressers in the house. There was 2 entertainment units that I refinished, 2 sideboards, dining room table, like a ton of stuff. So I like, again, it takes me things that take me away from my phone, take me away from that technology. And you can't really mess them up because if you do mess it up, you just start over or you just refinish it again. Um, or, color it a different color or sand it out or whatever. It's almost impossible to really mess it up beyond something that is fixable. It just takes a little more work. And a lot of
Yeah.
times there's a lot of trial and error. I've had projects that have gone horribly awry. I remember my son's dresser that I did when I was pregnant with him. I painted like I didn't like the color, so I redid the color, and then I put a stencil on it, and I didn't like the stencil, so I redid that. And it ended up, it was supposed to be, they talked about chalk paint being like, a 1-day thing, and it turned into like a 3-week project. So yeah, I mean, I like that though. There's trial and error about it. You learn something every time you do something. My husband laughs at the number of tools that I have acquired that assist me with my various projects. Gets mad when they're in the garage for too long though, so that's always fun. But yeah, I think it's being able to have something that I just kind of zone out from life, and I get to do something and then recreate something and learn something along the way.
Are you doing this only for yourself?
Yes, I don't feel confident enough in my skills to actually sell any of my pieces. I just do it for myself. There are lots of folks. That's another sort of community that I follow on Instagram. There's a huge amount of folks that do DIY and refinishing projects and things like that. So I certainly get some inspiration and ideas from them. But I don't think that I am detail oriented until I feel like I've had enough. So, for instance, my very large entertainment unit that took forever to do, I'd say I probably cut a few corners on the last couple of
Mhm.
things because I was just so tired and I just wanted it done. So yeah, I would say I'm not a perfectionist in that way. So unless I was a perfectionist, I don't think I would be comfortable trying to resell or sell any of my items. Someday if people want them, but that will be underneath if we're moving, then we might get rid of some stuff, but
But
for
it
now.
also adds, additional pressure when you are
Yes.
doing it for somebody, because when you do it for yourself, you are happy with the result. And as you told, you can, you know, leave something,
Mhm.
and it's not like very crucial. The story reminds me of uh, once I used to change screens on my phones. So
Mhm.
when I broke my phone screen, I just ordered a new one and found an instruction on YouTube and like made the same. It
Mhm.
worked. Then my
Mhm.
wife broke her screen, so I did the same. And then my wife's friend broke her screen,
Mhm.
and they asked me to change it, and I messed up. And I finished with going to real experts and paying them money to fix what I messed up. And it was like, nope, I will never do it for anyone, only for myself and for my
Mhm.
family.
Yes, exactly. Because then you're the one that's responsible for the outcome and you deal with whatever happens. And it's not, don't have to worry about anybody else.
Tell me the story behind your date night, steak night tradition with your husband?
Um, I'm not sure there's so much of a story rather than it just sort of started very early in our relationship. I don't even know exactly when. We've been together, I want to say 12 years now. Married for almost 10. And yeah, date night, steak night just sort of came about, especially after we had kids, but we did it before we had kids too. And we got to the point where we realized, kind of going out for dinner to the keg or something for steak dinner, was, really got quite expensive. And we found some really great butchers in the area. And my husband, much like yourself, he's a Googler, a YouTuber in terms of like, well, let me figure out how to do this. And so he just sort of researched, it's weird to say, but he researched barbecuing and steak grilling and like what the kind of best things to do are. And now, almost every Saturday night we have the exact same meal. It's ribeye,
Hmm.
usually a ribeye steak with Caesar salad and a baked potato, and mushrooms and some wine. And that's just sort of, we usually do that after, we used to do that after the kids went to bed because they went to bed at 7. Now they're older, so they kick around a little bit. And my son has decided he also loves steak. So it's a little less of a date night now and more just steak night, but we still sort of try to keep the tradition alive as much as we can.
Family night, steak night.
Yeah.
You played rugby, and I wonder, why did Cadence decide to play soccer?
Um, Soccer is just a much more popular sport here.
Hmm.
Um, our I play actually when I was a kid, I played baseball. That was my go-to sport for the longest time. Baseball and then volleyball and then rugby when I got into my teens. But soccer is a pretty popular in this area. For instance, like their soccer league, when you go, I want to say there's close to 20 fields and there's like
Mhm.
hundreds of people on the nights that we go. I actually coach my son's soccer team as well. And we have
Hmm.
our last game tonight, which I'm thankful for because it's a bit of a zoo. There's just kids everywhere and there's hundreds of people. It's crazy. But so there's a big soccer community here. That and my daughter in particular is quite good. It's a bit strange that at that age she has figured this out, but she's pretty impressive for her age. We've been told by other coaches, not myself, because I don't really know. I just think I'm just glad she enjoys it. That's all I care about. Go out, have fun. But yeah, she's pretty into it, and she typically, like much like her mother, likes to do things she's good at. So if she knows she's good at it, then she will continue to do it.
Who likes soccer more, Cadence or Connor?
Um, Probably Cadence. I think she sleeps in her jersey, in her outfit when she gets home. Connor likes it, but he's not quite as athletic as she is. She's very tiny and runs everywhere and bounces everywhere and is just a little ball of energy. And he's more sturdy and just kind of likes to chill.
While going through your Instagram, I saw definitely a lot of photos, and there were a lot of photos of Connor with dinosaurs or Transformers. So, what he likes more, dinosaurs or Transformers?
Um, hmm. Connor's pretty chill about his choices, really. He'll waffle back and forth. Like he still has all of his Transformers from when he was younger. He still has all his dinosaurs. He has Hot Wheels. He has Batman. Pokemon was big for a while too. And he's just pretty chill and pretty consistent. Like he still likes the same things that he did before. He's huge into Roblox these days. We actually had
Hmm.
to like take it away for the month because we felt like, okay, you need a break. It's summer, get out, enjoy it. You can have it back later. But so yeah, he's pretty consistent. He'll go back and pick up either of those things and play with them, if he wants to. My daughter is the opposite. She gets into very specific themes for certain amounts of time. She went through a Peppa Pig phase, so she had to have all the Peppa Pig toys. She went through a Bluey phase, so she had to have all the Bluey toys. Now she's on to Calico Critters. So yeah, she's pretty indecisive, not quite as committed. We see the same thing. My son has a stuffy that he was given when he was born, and he still sleeps with it and snuggles with it, and refuses to retire. And he's 8 years old now. And meanwhile, Cadence has gone through, 50 different stuffies over the course of her 6 years of, I want this one. No, I want that one. No, I want this one. Whereas Connor refuses to give up. He must have Funty all the time, every night.
Talking about Peppa Pig, what is your favorite animated movie?
Oh, it's a tie. I love The Lion King and Beauty and the Beast. Those were my two favorites growing up and continue to be. There's probably some other just good animated movies that I've seen since. I like Up. Up is a cute movie. It's the other one my kids watched recently. Inside Out is also a cute one. But yeah, I would say got to go to the classics and go back with Beauty and the Beast. And I don't know if we can I guess Lion King's probably considered a classic now, but
Yeah, everything what is good old enough considered classics, even though, and I wonder why Disney tries to kind of remake old cartoons, which is like, from one point it's like nice because nowadays kids didn't see those movies, but from another perspective, like, why do you do that? Like, it's so weird. But yeah, anyway, they have to go in time.
I did like the live action Lion King, actually. I thought that was actually really well done. The others, not so much. I think they've done Cinderella and they've done Aladdin and that sort of thing. That wasn't my thing, but I did actually like the Lion King one. My kids did too, because again, it's talking animals, so I think behind that.
I saw this message about Remember BlackBerry bandwagon. It was so fun, and I know that it took a big part of your life. So what is one story you always recall about working at BlackBerry, except for meeting your husband there?
Oh geez. I'm laughing because the one that immediately comes to mind, my girlfriend and I, who also worked at BlackBerry, were at the BlackBerry Live conference. That was their BlackBerry World. I forget what they called it. They changed the name. It was one of those. And we were working, and when we were off, our shifts were over. There had been an email sent out that everyone was, we were limited to a one drink maximum. And so we're like, okay, all right, one drink, huh? You sure? Like you mean in the conference center, or like, can I drink in my room? Like, obviously we were kind of trying to figure out a little bit of a way around the one drink. Because we worked hard. It was 3 days, we just sort of thought we wanted a little bit of a break. And somehow, somewhere, my girlfriend managed to find this like 2-liter wine glass that was like this big. And so she jokingly filled it with, like, I think it was just grape juice or something, but we were walking around the conference floor, and we bumped into the CMO and the chief communications officer, who was the one who had sent the email. And so I believe there is a photo somewhere of myself and my friend with the CMO and the chief communications officer. And the joke was we found a way around the one drink minimum, because this was this gigantic fishbowl. And yeah, it was we were a little mortified. We were not intending to get caught. But again, it was a joke anyway. At least I think it was. I can't remember whether she had actual alcohol in that or not, but it was an awkward joke afterwards.
But did they know that it was juice?
I can't recall the specifics of it, because I'm not sure if it was juice or not, or if there was a smaller amount. I don't really recall, but I mean, we didn't get in trouble because they just felt that it was a very creative way to get around it. So they let us go on a pass without too much hassle.
At least it's one drink, like.
Well, I think we were, I want to say they also asked us if it wasn't that we should be going back to our rooms and enjoying that in privacy of our rooms. So I believe we were directed to go home.
Kerri, I really wish to have the sky as the limit to our conversation, but time is the limit. So let's jump to the rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
A bottle of beer or a glass of wine?
Wine. White. Pinot.
Batman. Batman or Superman?
Batman.
What are your favorite color and song?
My favorite color is blue. Favorite song is like asking me to pick my children. I don't think I could tell you my favorite song. No, I don't have one.
If you were a superhero, what superpower would you have?
Problem solving.
Good superpower.
Mm.
Who do you learn from? Who do you learn from in the community world? Just name one person.
Erica Cool.
Name two people who I should definitely reach out and invite to community live conversation.
Kat Percy and Jen Finney-Frock.
Is there one question that I definitely should have asked you but didn't?
No, I think you researched me quite well. You went into places I wasn't sure if you would notice or not. But yeah, no, this has been great. Lots of fun.
Yeah. And Kerri, thank you very much for your time and for being such an open human. And, like when we connected first on a call, I immediately understood that I really want to know this person better, even though we just met for the first time. So you're very open, kind, outgoing, and I don't know, I just feel so much comfortable talking to you. So thank you so much for this conversation.
Awesome. No, thank you. This has been great. Lots of great questions.
And see you in the community world. And thank you so much for listening. If you like the show, hit the like button, 5 stars, and share it with your friend. That's it. We're done. See you in the next episode.